Welcome back to Dr. SuperCoach. In this video, we're going to be going through my team reveals and how they have progressed over the pre-season and where I'm sitting now. Coming up. Hey, what's up? It's Cheezo from Dr. SuperCoach. If this is your first appointment with us at Dr. SuperCoach, make sure that you do subscribe and hit the notification bell so you do get all notifications for our upcoming updates. JB's been doing a lot this pre-season. I'm going to be chiming in with some content. Hopefully we can convince Pistol to do the same, although he's very, very stubborn and very, very scarce in releasing information about his team. But make sure you do that to keep on top of all our future updates. In today's episode, we're going to be going through the evolution of my team all the way from December until basically today when we've got some news with Yo being out. I'll touch on what my plans are at the end of the episode, so stick around for that. So we might as well jump straight into December 17th. Now, as you can see from the team here, I've highlighted what I've got as premiums in green, and in red I do have the mid prices. Now, as you can kind of see to start with, it's not all that different to a lot of what we've been dealing with so far in the last week. I started with two premium defenders, Bose. Caulfield, Francis, McKenna were sort of like those elevated guys that I thought might get games early. Gould doesn't exist, so he's just on there for lols. And Chesser was already kind of earmarked as someone that's going to play. We now know that he's been named. In the midfield, I've got four primos. I had Laird, Oliver, McRae, and Green. I all thought that Laird and Oliver have a captaincy sort of options with McRae and Green, which I thought had upside. You can already see I've got Hopper, Callahan, Ashcroft, and Sardis, which disappointed he did his meniscus in his knee because I thought he was going to get games really early for Essendon. He's actually going to be a pretty good downgrade option as the year goes on. Bench, not too much to worry about, but obviously Oscar Baker already earmarked with English and Grundy. I guess this is like I didn't really know where to go to start with, and I was confident Grundy was underpriced. Madden already on the bench. And in the forward line, Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto with Fife, McLean and King, Philippou and Davey. I think the first thing that I'm seeing is there's not a whole lot different from the 17th of December until now. Pretty much along the same lines, same sort of names we see popping up. A few here and there. I'm surprised at how sort of accurate it was to the structures that we're sort of going and the names that we're kind of hearing. Obviously, some of these names have been cut out in recent times, but so 11 premiums and 4 mid prices is where I kind of started with. Not too dissimilar to what a lot of players are going at the moment. I guess you can kind of throw Caulfield in maybe at that price as another one, maybe 11 and 5. But we'll jump into the next one. Now, the next update was February 1st. So I actually sat on that team, on the team picker for quite a while. It wasn't until early February that I jumped back on and really kind of updated the team to see what I might want to do. A few names are changing, but the overall structure, the main difference is obviously I've got a fifth midfielder in there now. I've gone from 11 premiums to 12 premiums and back from 4 or 5 mid prices down to 2. Typical guns and rookies, which I've mentioned in the off-season that I struggled with getting to terms with the new gameplay that we're going to have in 2023 and what was 2022. So I have gone a little bit safer in this one. The bench rookies sort of not overly accurate, I guess. Bruce was a bit of a hit and hope. King and McLean are still on people's radars at that elevated price, but they're looking less and less enticing as the year goes on. We notice I've got Marshall in there now, LDU, Steele. I've dropped the Oliver and Laird combo, and I've gone with Stewart and Doherty in defence. Bose is still there. So let's jump to the next one, 7th of Feb. So a few little changes. I've now got, after doing some DDDs and looking into Sicily, I've jumped on the Sicily bandwagon. Yo has made an appearance after I kind of stood away from him for quite a long time. And, you know, now that we know that he's actually injured, it's going to be interesting what coaches are going to do. But he made an appearance. I've now dropped back down to 11-4. Jinby is now on field as we're looking a lot more confident in him. I had this moment where I really thought Miller was going to be a good point of difference, and I thought he had a little bit more upside in him. His injury has obviously crossed him off many lists. And then Bontempelli and McRae, I've been really hot on this preseason because I just think that they both got really good upside. The first appearance of Dom Sheed, I guess I was looking for that extra little bit of value in the midfield. That name can now be Warple, it can be Setterfield, it can be Bruin, Flanders, Fife. I've seen a lot of names kind of rotate through that M6, M7 spot, but that's what I was going with at the time. And you'll notice that down forward, I've kind of moved into the Darcy Cameron mould, like maybe I go a little bit deeper in the forward line because we don't have the rookies. Even at this stage, where I haven't really caught on to Fergus Green from the Hawks getting a game. Sin was borderline until his injury. There was a lot of good positive talk coming out of Port Adelaide, so I was liking the look of that, but Sin has been injured. I'm not inspired by where this went up until this point. Like, I think I was sort of going down the rabbit hole of how many points can I get projected. Let's see if I can crack the 2,800 mark sort of thing. So I was kind of stuffing in some more upside underpriced players, I think, was where I was going with that. We jump into the 10th of Feb. Again, not a whole lot has changed. I've dropped one of those midfielders down out of there. I'm back down to 4, and I've redistributed that to try and go for genuine guns in the forward line, back to a 12-2 sort of structure with Hopper and Bose. And I'm at this point, I'm settling on English and Marshall. I'm pretty happy with the ruck line at this point. And again, still not a whole lot of information to do with the rookies on the bench. It's strange to see that I was actually more accurate with my intuition on the 17th of December than I was on the 10th of Feb. So I certainly found that interesting. And McLean in the midfield there, just to try and find space to get Radagalier in after it looked like he'd locked down a role. And this is before we'd really seen his scoring potential, and the unofficial practice game, I think we saw him take a few marks or something like that. So that's where that movement has been. Is we jump into the 11th of Feb, the very next day. I've now brought Callahan back in, who was in my original side, still 12-2, but I've now gone only 3 in the forward line and 3 in defense. Now, this was a little bit to do with we weren't really sure what defensive premiums we were going to have. We didn't know whether the Weedles were going to play, Wilmot, McKenna, Gota didn't look overly good. Like, there was a few kind of concerns there that have since, we've seen Jones and Crozier and stuff pop up. So at this point, I was just trying to find the space for the rookies, and at this point in time, it looked like we had a little bit more rookies at the front. I don't know where Davey's gone. Don't ask me what happened there, but he's disappeared. And you sort of see that I'm trying to build a structure where I've got Phillips on field, is sort of where I am. And Miller, again, I just had a feeling about him in the pre-season, and that's why I had him in there. So if we jump to the 24th of Feb, so it's been another kind of a fortnight where I haven't really touched the team, doing a little bit of content. I do tend to change my team a lot, have a quick look at it, and then flip it back, which is why I'm not taking screenshots every single day. But you can see I've got Yo back in there. I've settled on Doherty and Dawson at this point of the preseason, 24 hours out from round 1. They were the 2 premium defenders that I would start if I went with 2 primos. And so, this is where I've still got Caulfield there. At this point in time, he was still in the fluoro vest, but it looked like he was getting a game for round 1, which we now know he isn't. Laird in for captaincy. Neil in because he typically always has a hot start. And a lot of these changes are typically after I do the DDDs and get interested in a particular player. You'll notice that this time around we've definitely got a much more realistic bench based on some of the practice games, and there's going to be a lot of coaches that literally go into the season with this bench, so I'm pretty sure it's like almost identical to what I've got now. So again, looking to try and keep Phillips on field with his role as a CBA mid. Davies Uniacke has turned up. I really like his upside, but I'm just worried about playing for North. It's going to limit the share of the pie that he was going to get. So still playing around with him at this point, and I had the perfect amount of cash to get him. You can see that I'm now definitely 4 deep consistently in the forward line. This is 3 weeks ago. So so we can kind of see that I've dropped back from English to Grundy in order to try and get up to LDU, but I think that'll change in a minute. So 1st of March, another week goes by. I've now dropped down to the 1 defending premium option with Yo and Bose still there. This is like when we were still contemplating whether Bose is injured, like whether he was rested or his injury, had an injury to his calf, which we since found out. Constable has made an appearance. Goda made an appearance. Sheed has come back for some reason. In hindsight, that probably could have been Warple. But if I could have stretched a little bit of cash to try and get there. You'll also notice that Flanders is making an appearance at F5, so he's now there. I've dropped Davey again for some reason, and Radagalier is on the bench. I think there was a little bit of panic on my behalf about what am I going to do if English goes down. He's got some injury concerns, so Radagalier with the ruck forward eligibility was going to match with Mannon, but at the end of the day, I didn't really want him on the bench. I'm now down to 11-5, which is perfectly fine. A lot of people are going to run something similar this year, probably even 10-6 or 10-7, depending on what you classify as a mid-pricer. But I'm starting to kind of tinker around with how much value I can get onto the team. As we move on to also the 1st of March, this was later in the day, I've basically got rid of Sheed for Callahan. McRae and LDU make some changes, and Flanders disappears. I've gone back to a 12-3, so heavy mid-price early in the day, and then for some reason later in the day I decided, I'm not super confident on the mid-prices, I'm going to jump back. So I've still got Doherty and Dawson in the defense with Yo. A little bit similar to a lot of teams at this point, but we'll keep progressing. And towards, I don't know why, the exact same time, I've brought Sheed back in. This is still the 1st of March, the next team I've got here. 1st of March must have been the day that I just sat on SuperCoach all the time. I'm back to 12-3, just for some different names. So instead of having 4 in the midfield, 4 up forward, I've then gone 4 in the midfield, 5 up forward with Radagalier at R2. So this is clearly when English was having some injury concerns, and I was like, okay, what else can I do? I've brought Cunnington into F5, who went really well in the practice games. So a lot of little playing around. You'll see that it definitely does kind of shape up differently in just a moment. As we move into the 10th team, this is the 4th of March. Now, this is where I kind of considered that we might have the opportunity to have these rookies on the bench scoring points. So someone like a Baker and Phillips, I don't necessarily want them on the bench week in, week out. So if I took another, let's say I brought Warple into this particular team, pushed Callahan to M6, suddenly Phillips and Baker are on the bench, and with their roles, they could easily go 75 plus this season. So I was sort of concerned about overloading the midfield. I've then redistributed out, and this is clearly after Goulden has had an absolute blinder in the pre-season. We've also seen the first appearance of Crozier in the back line there. We've still got the 2 defensive premiums at this stage on the 4th of March, and we're dropping down to 3 midfielders. 12-4 is probably the strongest sort of team that I've had so far in terms of mid-prices and premiums put together. Meaning there's less kind of rookies on field. So we're sort of feeling out where that value is going to be. As we move on to the next 4th of March, Darcy finally makes appearance. I did miss from the last one as well. I've now gone to 12-5, so we're up to 17 combined on-field players for maximum value as possible. We've now got Crozier and Stocker in the back line. You'll notice that at this point in time I also took out Yo. Now this is super handy for me because I can kind of go back and look at what did I do when I tried to get rid of Yo. And I got rid of him because I watched the pre-season game, and while a lot of people have been glowing of him in that game, I didn't think it was particularly impressive compared to the other mid-prices like a Worpel and a Hopper. I think Worpel is going to have the role. He's going to be able to get disposals like nothing else. His upside is going to be limited by the Hawks being bad and his disposal being bad. So whether he can go 95 plus to make the pick worth it is going to be interesting. But yeah, so I'm really starting to stuff a bit of value in there, and Darcy's making an appearance after, I've been searching over the last couple teams, as you can see, to try and find an R2 that I'm happy with. Now, on the 8th of March, this is the last team that I've done an update. And Yo's making an appearance. I'm back down to one premium defender, which is just Doherty. I've decided that he's the one I want to go. Jones, Crozier, the mid prices in the back line as well that I like the look of. Jelly has made an appearance, so we're now Laird, Bontempelli, Kelly, and Green in the midfield. I've dropped Worpel because I did want to pick up McKenzie. And again, I don't really want McKenzie, Phillips, and Baker, two of those on the bench. I'd prefer to have those three cycling between M7 and M8 as much as possible. Chester and Philippou on the bench as well. Chincotta was looking really positive to be getting picked earlier in the season. In the pre-season, but now Cowan is going to take his spot. So as you can see, I've got $31,000 there. I've clearly just upgraded him in the latest team, and I've now pushed Flanders to F6. You'll see that was McLean on the 4th of March. On the 8th of March, McLean's performance in the Pracky game was pretty bad. I didn't like his role, playing deep forward, half forward, wing. It's not really what I expected, considering the type of player he is and how he played in that one game in the finals last year, which was really impressive. And so now I've gone one premium defender, 4 in the midfield, 2 in the ruck line, and 5 in the forward line to give me a total of 12, with Yo, Jones, Crozier, Hopper, and Flanders giving me 5 value kind of mid prices as well. So that's 12 plus 5, which is kind of where I was pushing towards. You've seen most of this pre-season, I'm kind of 12 and 2, 12 and 3, 11 and 4, but to be able to push it to kind of 12 and 5, I feel like I've got a good balance of premiums and kind of underpriced mid-price players. And whether you count Crozier and Jones as mid-price is totally your choice. Potentially I've only got Yo, Hopper and Flanders in this team. So maybe that's a 12 and 3 depending on how you look at it. So that was where I was sitting on the 8th of March. I haven't made any changes until we've got the Yo news today. I think at this stage I'm contemplating, I've already done the trades to move around. I'm looking at going Cornelio to Bruin and Yo to Dawson, as Dawson was the D2 that I was looking at. I've also thought about going to Stocker or McKenna. I'm a little worried about only having one premium and being so exposed defensively, and that it would net me, maybe 150k or something like that collectively to move around my team. But as I'm looking at it here, I like Laird, I like Bont, I like Jelly, I like Kelly. I've got 150k in the bank. Where exactly am I going to be spending it, I think, is the part that I'm really struggling with. And I could upgrade someone like a Philippou to a Worpel, put Phillips on the bench, potentially something like that instead. So I could go Stocker, Yo to Stocker, and then Philippou up. That's another thing that I'm considering, and that will give me McKenzie at M8, Phillips, Baker, and Chesser all rotating through that M9, M8 position. No real chance to loophole, I guess, because I've got no one not playing in there. So it's not like I can necessarily get scores off that bench there. But we all know that players are going to be missing as the season goes on. So yeah, so that's basically where the team is sitting at this point. And I haven't made too many changes, but we're 24 hours out, and that's how it looks. Question of the day: which one of those teams do you think I had closest to the ideal starting squad to start 2023 SuperCoach? Which team would have you picked? Who have I missed out on in my current side, and you agree with what I've done to deal with the Elliot Yeo situation? Let us all know in the comments below. As always, if you want to find us, you can find us on all the socials. You can check out the merch store, or you can support us on Patreon and get some behind the scenes content. Thanks very much for watching. We'll catch you at your next Dr. Supercoach appointment.